Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me back. Today, we're going to dive into the pathophysiology and the tailored dietary interventions for three very common conditions, including autoimmunity, glycemic imbalance, and dyslipidemia. And my goal for today is to give you the why behind the what to eat so you can confidently give nutrition advice to your patients. So we're going to cover each condition in three parts. First, we're going to start with the core pathophysiology, so what's actually going wrong with the body. Next, we're going to look at the dietary levers that we can pull to address it. And then the third is we're going to look at a simple and actionable prescription that you can communicate to your patients. So we're going to start with autoimmunity. So autoimmunity is essentially a case of maladaptive adaptive immunity. It's a perfect storm, which requires three factors. So there must be a genetic predisposition, an impaired gut barrier, and also a persistent environmental trigger. The key pathophysiological events that we target are a crash in T regulatory cell function, which allows self reactive immune clones like Th17 to run unchecked. And then we also see a spike in zonulin, which leads to a hyperpermeable gut barrier and also systemic exposure to antigens. And then we also have molecular mimicry, where there are certain dietary peptides from certain foods, such as gliadin, that is from wheat, and then also casein, which is from dairy, which can mimic our tissues and trick the immune system into actually attacking itself. And so our dietary strategy has three levers. First, we must start by healing the gut, and we do this by feeding the gut microbiome with fibers and resistant starch from foods like oats and legumes and cooked and cold potatoes. And then these are then fermented into short chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is the primary fuel for colonocytes, and that strengthens the gut lining and improves barrier function. Next, we're going to want to focus on fat and protein quality. We want to encourage unsaturated fats from olive oil, nuts, and avocados, which support a healthier microbiome, over saturated fats that promote dysbiosis. And then when it comes to protein, we're going to want to emphasize plant protein, such as nuts and legumes, which increase microbial diversity and short chain fatty acid production, while high animal protein intake can actually reduce beneficial bacteria. And then third, we implement a targeted removal strategy. So based on the work of Vojdani, we start with a 3 to 4 week trial elimination of wheat and dairy, because these are the highest yield mimics. And the rationale is that IgG half-life is about 21 to 23 days, so this period clears the antibodies, and then we will strategically reintroduce these foods after that 3 week period. So the clinical prescription for autoimmunity, therefore, is to emphasize colorful fruits and vegetables for the polyphenols and for the fiber, cruciferous vegetables for glutathione support, omega-3s from fatty fish, and then we also, like I said, we want high fiber and plant-based foods. We also want to reduce refined carbohydrates and sugars, saturated fats, ultra-processed foods, and excessive salt and hot spices, which can increase intestinal permeability. And then we also want to implement that 3 week trial elimination of wheat and dairy, and then strategically reintroduce them. And then beyond diet, there are two lifestyle factors such as oral hygiene. We want to really take care of our oral health in order to counter pathogens that can contribute to autoimmunity, and then we also want to avoid environmental toxins that can directly trigger autoimmune responses. So we're going to start by trialing dairy and wheat removal first for those 3 to 4 weeks, because they are the highest yield mimics across multiple autoimmune diseases. And then we're going to strategically reintroduce these foods to see if we can provoke any symptoms. And then if they continue to cause symptoms, then we would eliminate them from the diet for as long as we need, while focusing on healing the gut and the microbiome. Okay, so now on to glycemic imbalance. So type 2 diabetes is fundamentally a state of ectopic fat accumulation, and this fat in the liver causes insulin resistance and drives up glucose production. And at the same time, fat in the pancreas causes beta cells to de-differentiate, and they don't necessarily die, but they fall dormant and stop producing insulin. And this is why the disease is potentially reversible. So the primary goal here is remission via significant weight loss, and the mechanism is that losing a significant amount of weight, on average around 15 kilograms, will drain this ectopic fat and reverse both cycles and restore insulin sensitivity and beta cell function. So, first, you've got to address the root cause, the ectopic fat. That means significant weight loss. So we're talking about 15 kilograms on average. So the direct trial showed this isn't just weight loss, it's what actually reverses the disease process by pulling fat out of the liver and the pancreas. So calorie restriction and exercise should be used to support this weight loss. And then once you're doing that, you can get strategic with the diet as well. The quality of fat is going to matter a lot. So swapping saturated fats for polyunsaturated fats, think nuts and seed oils and oily fish. This will directly improve insulin sensitivity and lower HbA1c as well. And fiber is going to be really important as well. It doesn't just slow down sugar at the first meal. If you eat the right kinds, like intact grains or lentils, they ferment and create compounds that keep your blood sugar more stable at your next meal as well. So that's called the second meal effect. And then we also want to focus on our sleep quality because poor sleep has been shown to negatively impact blood glucose regulation. So yeah, definitely focus on sleep quality. And then finally, we can directly support the pancreas by getting enough protein, which helps stimulate insulin release, which gives the beta cells a functional boost. And also using resistant starch, like those leftover potatoes or legumes, feeds your gut bacteria, which in turn will produce compounds that improve insulin sensitivity system wide. So you're helping the pancreas out from the inside out. Okay, so the research is very clear that swapping out saturated fats and refined carbs for polyunsaturated fats, like those in nuts and seeds and fish, does two really great things at once. First, it's going to give you better blood sugar control and it will lower insulin levels. But the really cool part is that it actually helps your pancreas work better. It's one of the only fats shown to directly improve your body's ability to produce insulin when it needs to. So the biggest takeaway isn't just to eat less bad stuff, it's actually to replace them with the good stuff. So you're not just avoiding a problem, you're helping your body fix itself. Um, so, again, like I already touched on, the second meal effect, it means that eating certain carbs at one meal can actually lower the blood sugar response at your next meal. And the food that best do this are intact whole grains like barley and rye, kernels, and legumes like lentils. And the mechanism is really fascinating. So, the resistant starch and fiber in these foods will ferment in the colon and produce short chain fatty acids, such as butyrate and propionate, and these compounds then circulate and improve whole body insulin sensitivity for hours. And then, so the prescription here is going to be a weight loss. We're going to really want to focus with weight loss to reverse ectopic fat. We want to focus on smart fats and fiber to improve insulin sensitivity. And we also want to make sure we're getting enough protein and resistant starch to support beta cells. And then also those lifestyle factors such as resistant training to provide an improvement in insulin sensitivity, and simple meal ordering advice such as having patients eat like non-starchy vegetables and protein before carbohydrate. So instead of just having carbohydrates on their own, we can pair them strategically with protein and non-starchy vegetables to effectively blunt the post-meal glucose spikes. So yeah, now we're gonna talk about our next condition, dyslipidemia, which is the core problem. Sorry, the core problem of dyslipidemia is not just high cholesterol, but elevating ApoB containing lipoproteins, such as LDL, VLDL, and IDL. And the mechanism is that these particles enter and become trapped in the arterial wall, which triggers inflammation and foam cell formation, which is the start of atherosclerosis. And the key insight from recent literature is that it's the lifetime exposure to the number of ApoB particles that drives cardiovascular risk. And we're going to look at how do we lower those ApoB particles. So the most powerful dietary lever is not total fat, but the fat quality. So the evidence from hundreds of controlled feeding trials all kind of show that saturated fats clog the system by downregulating the liver's LDL receptors, and then polyunsaturated fats, especially linoleic acid, do the exact opposite. So the common fear that omega-6 fats are inflammatory is actually a myth, and there's a large amount of data that shows higher levels of omega-6s are powerfully protective against both diabetes and heart disease. Um, so yeah, um, the evidence shows that swapping saturated fat for polyunsaturated fat for over 2 years cuts the risk of heart attack and stroke by nearly one third. Um, And then also we need to shift away from the whole omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. It's a very outdated concept, and the single most important message for dyslipidemia is to make sure you're replacing saturated fats with unsaturated fats. Okay, so for your patients, this would translate into a simple and multi-pronged strategy. So first, we must help them fix the fats. So making the switch from saturated to unsaturated sources. So we also can amplify this effect by including fiber, soluble fiber as well. There was a major meta-analysis that confirmed that a dose of 10 to 15 grams of soluble fiber per day, which can be achieved with a supplement or also just from food. Um, so the soluble fiber significantly lowers both LDL and the more important ApoB. So combining the soluble fiber with the unsaturated fats creates a very powerful portfolio approach. Okay. So to directly support vascular health and combat atherosclerosis, we can actually leverage nitric oxide. And the first way to do that would be by consuming nitrate-rich vegetables like beets and spinach, which provide the raw material for nitric oxide production. And then second, we want to adopt a Mediterranean or plant-based diet, which provides a synergistic mix of nutrients that support this pathway. Third, we want regular exercise because the physical force of blood flow against the vessel walls is a primary stimulus for nitric oxide release, which improves endothelial function. And then finally, we want to maintain a healthy weight to reduce the inflammatory burden that impairs nitric oxide synthesis. So these diet and lifestyle factors work together to protect the endothelium. Okay, so in summary, for dyslipidemia, the pathophysiology is clear. ApoB particles cause plaque, and our primary dietary goal is to lower them. Um, and the single most effective tool we have to improve dietary fat quality is to swap saturated fats with unsaturated fats, which is a strategy proven to prevent heart disease and diabetes. And we can powerfully augment this with a targeted intake of soluble fiber as well. And this provides a clear evidence-based nutritional path for your patients. So, to wrap up, we've seen that while a general healthy diet is a great foundation, precision actually is going to be really important here. You're going to want to tailor the diet to the pathophysiology. So, for autoimmunity, we target the gut barrier and immune mimicry. For glycemic imbalance, we target that ectopic fat to achieve beta cell remission. And then for dyslipidemia, we target ApoB particles through fat quality. So in each case, the dietary intervention is directly tied to the underlying pathophysiology. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I will take any questions.